Okay. Yep, I think it's
All
recording.
right.
Hey. Guess I should have this stuff. So Debbie, I want to thank you first of all for helping me out with this because this is a big
Our
project.
pleasure. Our
And
pleasure.
you're really helping my learning, honestly.
Good.
I appreciate it. Volunteering is not always easy or fun. So before we get started though, I want to know, what was the main objective of the lesson?
The main objective was to look at the diversity of the animals and the plants and the group of Indians that Lewis and Clark encountered on their journey.
So as you watched the video and you reflected on the lesson, what are some things that were particularly satisfying?
One of the things that I was really happy with is that the students were excited to share their 2 cards. We don't do sharing, the old-fashioned sharing, and I think they were really excited to come up and look on the map and share their cards and be a part of that. I heard from students afterwards how much they enjoyed doing that. They thought the lesson was fun and they really enjoyed it.
What are some things that maybe concerned you after the lesson?
I felt like the lesson was long. I mean, if we had divided it into 2 parts. I was surprised that the kids remained engaged for as long as they did. But I think the length of it next time would be better if we did one day, 1 card, the second day, the second card.
I wondered about that too. So how would you compare the level of engagement the student, and this kind of goes along with that, maybe it was too long, but how would you compare the level of engagement of the students had at the beginning of the lesson versus at the end of the lesson?
More wiggling was taking place. That was a big clue to me. Ethan at the back, I noticed that he was having trouble with his chair. And he was pulling it back, but it was a struggle for him.
Yeah, I noticed a couple of students.
Carissa, yeah.
And even, you know, like Brandon, who's
Yes.
typically a pretty well...
It was a stretch,
Yeah.
the length of time.
It was, and I would say though that the kids did a very good job in, you know, not being disruptive,
Right.
and really staying engaged. But you could see that they were kind
They
of
were
starting
stretched.
to wiggle a
Yeah.
little bit, and maybe.
But I was really proud with how they were trying to hold it together.
So, what might be some instructional strategies that you might employ to sustain that student engagement throughout the lesson?
Checking, I thought maybe if they had a map that I had printed off and that they could mark along the way numbers, that would help improve that lesson and keep them more engaged.
I was also thinking maybe possibly giving them an opportunity to look at their cards, you know, when they got them, and asking them to maybe read their cards and maybe share with a partner at their table
True.
about
Yeah.
what their card was about. That might help.
Engage them. Yes.
And maybe take that long span down a little bit for them.
Right. Right. I laid the cards out this morning on the long table, and I didn't say anything to them. But I found it really interesting how they naturally gathered around and they were sharing, and they would look at a card that someone else had shared, and they obviously looked at their own card, and I was proud to talk about that.
Good. So they had an opportunity then
to reflect on
to
that.
reflect and share. So I know you did an exit ticket.
I
at
did.
hand?
I brought some. I brought a high, a medium, couple medium, and low, so that you could see
good.
them.
Mm-hmm.
This is a high. That was a low, low, medium, and low medium.
Interesting.
And they were all different. That's what I liked to see.
Did you notice, was there any pattern in their response as far as the connection to the cards that they had themselves, or were?
Well, that's what I was looking for. Did they reflect just on their own cards? And that was the thing that surprised me, is that it was about 50-50. And I expected it to be higher, that they would particularly stick to their own. But I think with what they were bringing to the lesson, prior knowledge, helped them connect with other parts.
That's an interesting, I really liked everything about the Lewis and Clark expedition. Will be one of the most famous things throughout the history.
I thought that was very cute. And then this little guy has a real struggle with writing, but I was really pleased with what he had to say.
Now again, what were the directions for their exit ticket?
So I wanted them to write a reflection of the activity that we did and what would stand out in their memory. What were they going to remember the most from these cards and the Lewis and Clark expedition?
And so, given this information and the feedback that you got from the students, how would you rate, or what would you say the effectiveness of the lesson?
I think I would rate it a 7 to an 8. I think it was more of a fun activity for them, to get them up out of their seat, engage them, and connect them with the map. They liked getting this little picture on here too. That connected them closer to Lewis and Clark.
So a lot of visual use. So given your reflection of the lesson, what are some things you may change in the future when doing this particular?
Right. Well, one of the things we talked about is the length. I would break it into 2 days. I have done this lesson in the past, and with a smaller group where they may have gotten 3 cards, and it tended to go pretty fast. But with a large group, it seemed to slow it down, even though they had 2 cards to share to get everyone in. So depending on the size of the group, but with a large group like this, divide it in half at least. Some of the things that would like to continue with is more research. There's other plants and animals that did not come up on that game. So what could they do? How could they hunt and find some additional plants and animals and Indian crafts and tribes that they encountered? It said they encountered 50, and all 50 were not different Indian tribes, and they weren't all listed in that particular game. The next thing we'll be doing is taking a virtual tour of Fort Clatsop. And we'll talk about the winter, how hard it was. They realized, we talked a lot about weather prior to this, that while at Fort Clatsop there were only 6 days of sunshine. And what must have that been like? How did they keep themselves busy? We'll reflect on the journals that they kept.
So, just going back, because one of the things I think we would both agree is that the length of the lesson tended to get a little bit wiggly. The kids got to be a little bit wiggly. What are some ways that you might help alleviate that the next time you do the lesson?
Well,
Other
short,
than the two?
yeah, shorten it up, but, I think, maybe, if I had got them up on their feet, and those that had the plants could congregate together, and maybe the people that had the plant groups could share, and maybe the people that had the carnivorous animals and the water birds, and they could share what they had and what was similar, and classify in that way.
I agree. I think sometimes we need to let kids get more involved in that learning, that discovering
Right,
of their own,
right.
and being able to share with one another.
And oftentimes they discover that better in a small group than holding it together in a large group.
That's much more difficult.
Right.
Great. So what I'm hearing is that the next time you're looking at this objective, really shortening up that period a little bit, getting the kids more engaged in doing their own reporting of some of the information and connecting together, and then doing more research, because there's a lot more out
There's
there.
such a huge amount of research that they could do.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Debbie.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Thank you for coming and sharing the activity
Yeah,
with us.
that's awesome.